Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. We are back on the campaign trail this weekend in the 1st Congressional District. Our guest this morning is one of the Democrats hoping to break through in a busy primary. Christian Urrutia is here. Thanks for joining us, Christian.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
So, anyone shopping for gifts right now is feeling the pinch of higher prices and inflation. Lots of household items and goods are more expensive today than they were at this time a year ago. Tariffs have played a role in that in part. And even when Democrats regain power, do you see a retention of some of the Trump tariff policies, or do you want to go back to the way it was of freer trade?
Yeah, look, I think we got to get rid of a lot of the Trump tariffs. They're incredibly crushing to small businesses. Small businesses right now don't really know where things are going to go. And I say this knowing this firsthand. My wife runs a small business. She is not a political person. She has Truth Social now on her phone because she's wondering, is the price of my goods going to be 50% more expensive, 100% more expensive? What tantrum is the president going to throw that's going to cause my business to go into a spiral? Businesses can't handle that type of instability. So we got to curtail these tariffs significantly. And we also have to have a Congress that actually takes some of this power away from the president. No one person alone should be able to dictate what happens to our small businesses and to all the families there that are just trying to make ends meet. It's gotten incredibly expensive. It's squarely on the president.
Are there any industries in which you see the tariffs being retained? These are an instrument that can protect labor at times.
Yeah, I think it's very limited. I think when countries are engaging in uncompetitive practices, when countries like China has done at times, tariffs can play a role. But the way the president has done this has been kind of a shotgun approach. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I don't think we need to be putting tariffs on coffee, for example. That doesn't make any sense at all. We need leaders that actually understand where we have to use the tariffs and where they shouldn't be applied, and they shouldn't be playing political games with it.
Of course, everybody's feeling the pinch of inflation. One of your policy proposals is to increase the federal minimum wage. That would obviously help people at the lower end of the economic scale. But isn't that going to make the potential inflation problem even worse for middle-class families who will then be paying more as the wages go up?
Well, look, I think when you look at corporations, they're making an incredible amount of profits. The richest in our country, the billionaire class, is getting richer and richer and richer. The minimum wage hasn't gone up since 2009. The cost of living since then has gone up 40%. That doesn't make any sense at all. We need a living wage that goes up with the cost of living as it rises up. That's what's fair. People need the dignity of knowing that if they work full-time, they're going to be able to afford a home, afford some food. That's what we need to get to. And the vast majority of people agree with that basic proposition. The minimum wage is far too low. A lot of New Hampshire people work for less than 15 hours, $15 an hour. You can't afford a life on that, and people are really feeling squeezed by that.
You're an attorney. You've served in the military. Is the Trump administration committing war crimes in the Caribbean, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, let me tell you. So obviously I've served in the military. I put on the uniform. I also advised at the Department of Defense. In the last administration, I was in the special counsel. I was advising the secretary and other senior leaders on this type of operational matters. When I look at the facts before us, and I look at domestic law, and I look at international law, I don't see any legality in what is happening right now. A lot of facts are still unknown. The video hasn't been produced. They said they were going to produce the video of one of the strikes. They haven't produced it. A lot of questions are out there, but I'm deeply concerned. I'll tell you this, though. This isn't what our military should be focusing on. It should be focusing on protecting us from existential threats. And I see all of this as a distraction from an economy that's not doing so well right now, a distraction from the Epstein files, a distraction from the chaos of Washington. They want us to be thinking about Venezuela, the Caribbean, not about what's broken here at home. We need leaders that are going to focus on actually fixing our enduring problems.
So what is the appropriate congressional response if the president does take expanded military action in, say, Venezuela or around Venezuelan waters in a way that is more than just, as you say, a distraction?
Yeah, I think they need to assert the War Powers Act. Congress has abdicated too much authority to the executive, and that's been in Democratic administrations too, frankly. We need a Congress that's a lot more robust, that will assert the War Powers Act, that will actually keep the president from getting us involved in unending ending wars with unclear goals. We've done that for far too long in our history. We need a Congress that is robust, and if I go to Washington, I'll fight for that.
The Refuse Illegal Orders video that popped up last month that created a firestorm of controversy. Of course, Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander was involved in that. Again, from your attorney/service member perspective, should those members of Congress involved have been more clear about what they were talking about? Say, enumerate a possible illegal order, or perhaps reference these boat strikes rather than leaving it so open.
Yeah, look, all they did was state exactly what the law says. There's no controversy here. And, you know, I find it remarkable that so many of the Republican leadership has gotten up in arms about it, because Secretary Hegseth said this back in 2016. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, signed on to the brief that made this very point. It's enumerated in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. There's just, frankly, no controversy. And I think Maggie Goodlander, she served her country. She's serving New Hampshire well. I think she was well within her rights to state that, and I think it's important that everyone in this country understands that basic proposition. The military follows lawful orders.
Let's circle back to the government shutdown. You were very vocal in your criticism of the frontrunner in your primary, Stephanie Shaheen, saying she needed to, quote, repudiate her mother, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, and her role in ending the government shutdown, and, quote, disavow any further political support for her mom as well. Is that a bridge too far? I mean, obviously asking someone to disavow and repudiate their own parent, it seems like, would you be willing to do that? It seems like a lot.
So first, let's zoom out for a second. Millions of Americans right now are going to see their premiums go up 2x, 3x. I've been unequivocal in criticizing Senator Jeanne Shaheen for the role she played in brokering this deal. Stephanie still hasn't done that. And look, I thought you'd probably ask me about this, so I actually have her statement here with me. And I look at it, and do you know what name isn't present on this? Senator Jeanne Shaheen. Jeanne Shaheen brokered the deal. The only name Stephanie talks about is Speaker Johnson. And what we need are leaders that are going to be clear and stand on their own 2 feet. What makes this even worse, though, she knew that the deal was being brokered. The New York Times reported this. Stephanie knew exactly what was going on, and she did nothing. That's not leadership. What these times require are fresh leadership that are disconnected from the broken politics of yesterday. Look, we don't have kings in this country. We don't have royal families. We don't need political dynasties either. And I say that about John Sununu on the Senate side, just as I make that criticism about Stephanie Shaheen. But this is the thing. Our politics don't need to be broken. Things can be so much better. We can have fresh leadership that actually sits down and lays out a vision for tackling the healthcare crisis. I have, from day one, I've said we need a universal healthcare system. We need Medicare for all. We can do better.
In less than 8 years, we're going to see Social Security benefits unable to keep up, essentially. There's not going to be enough money in the system to pay out full benefits. In Congress, how would you solve that particular problem?
Look, literally, billionaires only have to pay the Social Security tax up to about $170,000. That doesn't make any sense. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to pay their fair share as you go up the amount of income that they make. If you made that change, it resolves about 80% of the challenges we have. It is basic principle. Right now, the richest in the country, and I'm not talking about anyone that's living in Manchester here, the richest in the country are not being taxed. We deserve a lot better. This administration is in bed with, ultimately, the billionaires, and I think that's causing a great harm to so many Americans.
Would you raise the retirement age, though?
No, I think the retirement age should stay at 65.
Another unsexy but important issue is also the national debt. You've got a lot of ambitious plans, as you've described, from Medicare to all these other things. But the interest payments on the national debt are over $1 trillion a year now, and that curve is only going to go up as the next decade goes on. If this is an issue you're going to take seriously, how can you be proposing more spending?
Yeah, well, I think it's also about who are we taxing? What does the tax code look like? Do you know Jeff Bezos pays a less effective tax rate than teachers? That doesn't make any sense at all. There are so many loopholes in our taxation system right now. And Washington caters to the special interests. They cater to the corporations, the people that are funneling all this money into our politics. We need to get away from that. And we need to have an actually progressive taxation system so that everyone pays their fair share. Right now, that's not happening. That would solve a significant amount of the problems we're having.
The transition to green energy, this is not something that the market is doing on its own at a pace that I think most Democrats would like to see in order to deal with climate change. How do you balance attempts to address climate change without unduly burdening consumers at the lowest end, the people who can't afford high energy increases, that the cost would go up to try to facilitate this transition?
Yeah, well, we need to facilitate the building of more green energy sources. This administration is making it a lot harder. They're going after wind power. They've gone after solar. Right now, the leading producer of solar and batteries in the world, it isn't the United States. It's China. Okay, that makes the United States less and less competitive. The future is not in fossil fuels. It is in green energy sources. We need a government that's going to foster that, that's going to help develop those industries, not make it harder for them. That's what this administration's doing.
But how much more should the little guy be paying to facilitate that? Because these are tax dollars that are going to do it.
Yeah, I see this as an investment, though. This is a long-term investment in the ability to create more energy, to make it cleaner, to ultimately make it cheaper. There's a lot of externalities that come with fossil fuels. They cause pollution. They cause cancer. They cause significant harm to a lot of people.
One last question here I want to sneak in. Again, from a legal perspective here, and this is an issue that's been for the last 2 administrations, does Congress need to be passing new laws to prevent members of the presidential family from profiting while they have a relative in the White House?
Yes. Look, you know, a report just came out. Eric Trump, his wealth has gone up 10x since his dad became president of the United States. That is just reeks of corruption, frankly. And this is the thing. We need a government where we know that the leadership is invested in making life better for everyone, for all the citizens, not just for their family members. I think that's a very sensible proposal.
All right, Christian Urrutia, thanks for joining us on Close Up. We'll see you out there on the campaign trail in 2026.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.